Good afternoon. You're listening to My Conscious Dad on your hometown station, AM 1220 KHTS. I'm your host, Jasmine Urbina, here in the studio with my dad and co-host, Alex Urbina. And today we have a very special guest.
Yeah, we got a world exclusive. And the reason why, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off because I get really excited. We have a special guest in studio. She's actually my coach, my mentor, and you've been pivotal in my growth and my journey, and I owe you everything. And I want to thank you first for taking the time for being here. It's such an honor and a privilege to have you sit in with us today. I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much, Alex and Jasmine. I can't tell you how excited I am here to be here and to talk with you guys and to contribute and maybe take something away myself, too.
Absolutely.
She's also a contributing author to your book, right?
Yeah, Sue Keith, she's a transformational trainer. She specializes in heartfelt leadership. I call it heartfelt leadership because for the first time in my life, I learned how to distinguish the difference between egotistical leadership and heartfelt leadership, the authentic leader that's within us. And we'll talk a little bit more about that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm actually really excited now that you said egotistical leadership. I don't know what that is, but I'm kind of interested in going over that distinguishing what the difference is between the two, because obviously one sounds better than the other. So I would really like it if you guys go over that.
Well, part of the book, and we're going to really be talking about the book and as a conscious parent and finding the magical ingredients for successful parenting. For me, the magical ingredients is the beingness that we have as a powerful tool that's in our belt that we're not all consciously aware of. I didn't realize that until I embarked on that journey, 20 some years ago. And we were talking about that, earlier. It's like, wow, 20 years have gone by that we've known each other and been a part of this, journey together and growth and partnership. But I didn't realize that there was something powerful within me called my being. And once that was explained that in our leadership program and the trainings that I did, and I woke up to acknowledging that there is this magical, mighty, powerful being within me, and when I give myself permission to access it and trust it and call it forth, it takes me to places I never thought I could imagine.
And it's a little bit uncommon for people to step back and start with working on who you're being in the matter. Most of us as human beings want to jump right in and do something different, right?
Well, I think that's how we were taught. I mean, when you grow up in when you're young and you're in school, you're taught to do more or do it different or be better, do it in a better way. And I think that's the philosophy that we'll talk a little bit later called, do, have, be, rather than the concept of mastery, which is be, do, have.
Yeah. Exactly.
And we'll really break that down a little bit more in the show. But that's really the essence of what it was for me, finding that magical ingredients within myself. And I really had to tap into a whole nother level of leadership, of self-leadership. And what a ride it was and continues to be.
Exactly. And there are so many cross paths to the whole parenting thing too, right? So as you're developing your heart and getting in touch with that part of you, it goes right along as a leader as a parent as well, because one of the common pitfalls in parenting is do as I say but not as I do, and that command and control model where it's more about my vision for my kids than actually creating that relationship where I can then find out, hey, where do you see yourself going? What are your dreams for your future, for who you want to be, and empowering our kids at whatever age that we're going to be on the path and on the team of you and your vision and where you're going, and pulling back and needing to let go as a mom, so to speak, what my vision would have been for my kids. That was huge for me in, my parenting path with my kids.
I think for kids, it's really exciting to hear your parents say, hey, what is it that you want to do, versus, hey, this is what you should be doing. You need to go to college and you need to, do this and that. And it's very insightful and it's very inspiring for kids to have somebody, a coach, a mentor, especially a parent, to say, what is it you want to do? Let me help you get there.
But that's the part of the parenting journey that I have started to embark on through the last 20 years of working on myself, is breaking through finally through the clouds and discovering this new level called learning how to empower and inspire your kids rather than the old autocratic style of parenting, which is the control or the managing.
Right. And a lot of that comes from we haven't learned how to deal with our own fears, right? So we as parents, we're like, oh my God, I don't want to screw this up. Like, this is important. So we tend to want to, in that fear, hold on tighter and control, and, even to the extreme of, gee, wouldn't it be great if I could raise my child in a plastic bubble and no one would ever hurt him or her or anything like that. And it's exactly the opposite. So in the transformational work we've done, it's about clearing off all of that stuff personally, so then I can be who I get to be from a confident, loving, open, vulnerable space, and then create that relationship with each of my kids, because it's not just one style of parenting, right? Because you've got to adapt who you be in relationship to who your different kids are.
Yeah, because life's not linear. Life is a constant state of recreating ourselves. So your kids are advancing, they're growing, they're getting smarter, they're learning tricks, they learn how to play, mom versus dad. So they're evolving. And that means that your parenting style has to evolve. That means you as a human being have to keep evolving. Mm-hmm. And it's usually the frustrated parent that seeks me out when their kids are at their teen years and they're wondering why they can't control them anymore. They don't have their ear anymore. Their kids aren't listening. They're not cooperating. And a lot of times, parents look at themselves and say, wow, I really missed the boat on this one. I really missed the red flags earlier on when I really could have started learning and growing and developing along with them. You have to be 10 steps ahead of your kids nowadays.
Right. And it's also noticing, for me, I called it choosing my battles, right? So there are issues that come up where, no, this is important, I'm going to stand my ground. And then there's also the things that come up where it's actually their form of starting that independence pathway, right? So noticing, is this important that I allow and empower this to go on, because this is part of that breakaway process, and standing and being independent and getting clear on what they want versus what I want for them. So there's a little bit of a dance that way, I think, in being able to recognize when to hold ground and when to just go, okay, I'm not, go for it.
I really like that you mentioned that, because I have a lot of friends who have very, I guess you could say, strict parents or controlling parents. And I remember growing up and they would want to do things like get, different kinds of clothing or do their hair differently, cut their hair short, stuff like that. And they'd be too afraid to be themselves and go out and try to do like more independent things because they were afraid of their parents. Now, I understand the need to control your kids when it comes to maybe getting piercings on your face and, things like that. And like you said, picking your battles is really important for us as kids, especially in those like junior high school years, mm-hmm. where we're growing and we're developing and we're trying to figure out who we are, not through our parents.
Exactly. For my example of that is with my son, right? And he's 17. When he was 17, he really wanted to get a tattoo. And so in that moment, I said, okay, your body kind of belongs to your dad and I till you're 18. When you're 18, then we can talk about you starting to make some choices. And so that was my point. And then he actually went back and thought about it. And then he came back and had a very well thought out enrollment conversation with me.
I wonder where he learned that from.
And addressed all my issues. And it ended up being, so long as when you put a shirt on to go to work or, nowhere visible in the business or workplace. And, we had some parameters that we worked back and forth on where I felt like my needs were being addressed and he felt like his needs were being addressed. And that whole interaction was actually part of transitioning our relationship.
But that's what I love about what you're describing is you guys were conscious enough, open enough, compassionate enough to sit down and orchestrate a family meeting.
Yeah.
You sat down and said, all right, bring your concerns, and you were open to negotiate and find a common ground where there's a win-win rather than no. And why? Well, because I said so, which is the old school style of parenting. It's the forcing them, the muscling them, which is, we all know that it just pushes them the other direction, right?
And those are more often than not the kids that rebel. They do that stuff anyway. It goes underground.
That's right.
And it's stuff you never know about.
That's right.
And for me, early on, having done a lot of coaching work and training work, it was way more important to me as a parent to have that open communication where there's going to be stuff I would tell my kids that you're going to do that I'm not going to approve of, or you're going to get in trouble. And I want you to know that I want to be the first place you come to. And, I'll always have my opinion about it, but I want you to know there's an open space where we can be about the solution to whatever it is, and you will always be heard in that moment. So, I think that needs to expand. I think more parents, if we took kind of a more compassionate perspective in the process that our kids are going through in that growing up stage, that perhaps there'd be a lot less rebellion and needing to really go way out there in order to kind of break those bonds and be independent.
And what I really loved was growing up, I always felt like there was a sense of balance or like equality between my ideas and my opinions with my parents. I remember one time in high school, I wanted to go on a road trip with my friends for my birthday, and my parents were like, I knew they were going to say no, but I also knew that they would be fair enough to entertain the idea. And I came with like a poster board
there you go.
Showing exactly all the stops we were going to make, the hotels we were going to stay at, this whole plan. And my parents ended up compromising with me, and instead of going throughout, all of California, we just stopped at San Francisco. But I was young, I was 17, and it was a big deal for them to let me and my friends go, so far and travel and do all kinds of things. But I knew going into that I needed to enroll them because we have that relationship where everything was open and they were going to entertain my ideas and my opinions and everything. So I really think that was important and is what made our relationship so strong, was having that, I guess, openness and entertaining my ideas and not making me feel like I was dumb or that I was a kid that just didn't know what they were talking about.
Exactly.
So I think that's very important.
And on our end, it required a lot of trust. It required a lot of surrendering. It required a lot of, creating a space for her to figure out who she is and trust that if they got a flat tire that she's competent enough to make phone calls and get, and we guided her through that whole process. But it's a big deal for parents, especially when you love your kids and you don't want anything to happen to them.
It sounds simple, right? But when you're in that situation, everything in you wants to jump in and fix it. Oh my God, nope, do this, do that, and the other thing. For me especially, that pulling back and getting that the struggle and having them figure it out is actually a bigger gift than me needing to feel needed and wanted and fulfilling my parental duties and, clearing the pathway of any debris as they go through life.
And I think that's what conscious parenting is stopping instead of being on automatic pilot or reacting to your kids without even a thought, but having a conscious moment where you just sit there, take a deep breath. Even if you say, you know what, let you and your mom, let us think about it, right? But without coming from all your fears and all your insecurities and just making a decision, in that moment, catching yourself and saying, all right, let us think about it, and then put on all right, honey, let's put on her shoes and see where she's coming from, and looking at it from all angles. Right. I think that's what kids appreciate, is that at least you're interacting with them like their opinion or their idea, at least it's important or it's valid or that it matters.
Yeah, I actually love that. And going a little bit back to what you said earlier, Sue, was being compassionate for us, because we're young and we're scared. I was afraid to drive my friends all the way up, the state and not have my parents there. I was terrified, and I was also terrified of asking, with the fear of getting rejected and saying no, or all the work that I had put into this idea and looking into hotels and gas and everything. It was scary to, to present this idea knowing that they could say no.
Right.
But at the same time, I know that they were afraid to let me go too. So I think we're both just really fearful of what's going to happen and what's going on. But I also think it's important to communicate with your kids, I'm making this decision because I'm afraid, being honest and saying, I'm afraid that you're going to get hurt, or that I'm afraid of you being alone, or whatever it is for any situation. Admitting that you're afraid will make us feel a little bit better. It doesn't feel like you're just trying to control us and you don't want us to live our life and have fun. It feels honest.
Yeah, and it's also creating a dialogue where that happens. Like, it's almost setting the stage for that new part in the relationship where you sit down and you work through, okay, this is how our relationship is now going to work. Here are the things that are important to me as a parent. And then more important than that is listening. So I want to hear from you, what are the things that are important to you? And then from those two sides, we can meet in the middle so that we both feel heard, and our concrete things that are really important, there's a way to figure all that out. So we're both now empowered in that new development of our relationship.
Earlier, when you were talking about the story with your son and the tattoo, it brought up a memory of my youngest daughter, Sasha. She wanted what's called a Monroe. Do you know what a Monroe is?
No.
It's a earring stud, like a diamond stud that they put in their upper lip.
Okay.
It looks like a mole that Marilyn Monroe had.
Oh, okay, yep.
And I remember, me and my wife looked at each other, and I think she was 14 or 15, something like that. And, we said, let us think about it. We thought about it very cleverly overnight, and we said, all right, we don't want to shoot her down, because we know, again, how difficult that is to come to your parents and ask for something like that, whether you're doing, a tattoo or putting, jewelry on you, on your body or your skin. So we said, all right, tell you what, this is the creative idea we got. You get a bunch of people to back up why you think you should have the Monroe.
Right.
And we're going to collect some people to share their opinions on why we think that you don't necessarily need it. And she was like all excited, like, all right, no problem. Because she knew she was going to go to her friends, and all her friends are. So me and my wife called up my mom, like just her grandma and the aunts, and they did a whole testimonial saying, you're so beautiful, you don't need things like that. And so when we gathered all of ours and we sat down and we shared some of that stuff with her, she started crying, and she just realized, you know what, maybe I was choosing it for the wrong reason. But and it was, she was crying, we were crying, because we were trying to figure out how to be, without stomping on her, how to be proactive and still having her idea be valid, but painting a different picture for her so that she can see that she doesn't necessarily need to be putting all this stuff on her, that she is beautiful. And when she saw that perspective shift, she just realized, okay, you know what, I realized that I don't really need it or want it that bad. But it was something that she decided. It wasn't us telling her, because we knew if we told her with her frame of mind, it's still what she wanted.
If it wouldn't end up being the Monroe, it would be something else.
Yeah, and it would have been hidden. Exactly. And so we just figured out, how can we enroll her into her seeing it for herself? And the best idea we came up with was, let's get other people to chime in about why they think she doesn't need it.
Yeah. And just to complete the circle on this, I think this is one of those magical ingredients, right, that are addressed in your book, is listening and like having two sides to the dialogue,
like
and,
open,
and getting that it's a path.
Open.
Yeah, you each have a purpose on this path, walking forward through life, and to be cognizant as a parent what my purpose is and what it isn't, but I might think I would want it to be. Again, based on my fears or need to control the situation or any of that. And there's so much in, like, in that part of just trusting the process that feels like it's a leap of faith.
And that's what's cool about the portion that you're contributing. You're one of the contributing authors to the book that I'm writing, Empowering and Inspiring Your Teenager. And the chapter that you wrote about is trust. And it was all around the trust that you had to develop within yourself with your kids. And it's an amazing story. And I can't wait for the world to hear it. It's pretty cool.
I love that personally. I can't wait to read it. I think that a lot of parents, again, because of fear, they don't trust their kids. And as a pretty trustworthy kid, I think, growing up, I didn't really give my parents too much trouble, I don't think. But I know that even though I had their trust, it was still really hard or really challenging to get to where I wanted to be, even with that trust. So I can't even imagine kids who don't have that trust and who don't have not just the trust, but not even the communication.
Yeah.
And that's so scary to me, to think that kids can't talk to their parents and their parents aren't telling them, hey, I'm afraid. Like, I'm scared. If you're listening right now and you're a parent, which you probably are, if you tell your kids that you're afraid, they'll leave you alone. They're like not going to keep asking for that same thing, because they're going to finally understand. And it's like seeing your parents get emotional or be honest is like, it's I don't know how to even explain it.
It's almost like a very powerful tool that you can use as leverage, and just the honesty and being able to be authentic about it.
Yeah, and it's the same thing tying back to leadership in this 20-year journey we've been on. As human beings, if we want somebody to go somewhere, like to open up and, in all the relationship work that I do.
Someone's got to go there first, right?
I've got to go there first,
That's
right?
Yeah.
And that is especially true with parenting. I've got to open up. I've got to show my vulnerabilities, have the courage to step into my own fear when it comes up. And from that place, I create space and permission for it to come back that way too. And then to honor that.
One of the biggest secrets as a coach in this journey is learning that if I want to cause vulnerability or compassion or having somebody open up in front of me, I have to be that first. Yeah. And if I can teach parents that if you are willing to go there first and have that courage, you will cause those experiences for your kids and create a whole nother level of extraordinary relationships with them.
Yeah.
What's also great is that if you're a little bit afraid and you don't have that courage yet, a lot of teens will be willing to go there if they know about it. So I see kids in your teen leadership workshops, and they come back and they're like, oh my God, I did this with my mom, and she was like so shocked. And so kids are willing to go there. So if you're not ready, maybe let your kid do it, but you have to give them the tools, put them in a training or a workshop, because I really think that they can do it.
Kids are way more open to it.
All right, sounds great. Stay tuned for more of My Conscious Dad right here on your hometown station, AM 1220 KHTS.